Hi, I'm Cacky, and this is my story. So my life before I found out something was wrong was pretty normal. I had just graduated high school, and I was planning to go to college in the fall. I was planning to go for nursing, and so I was doing a lot of college prep things like picking out my classes. I had just found my roommate. I had bought some dorm things, and I was just having a very nice normal summer, and I was just spending it at the beach with my family, and really it didn't seem like anything was wrong.
Super excited, buying stuff for her dorm room and all that stuff. So I guess it was like an anticipatory excitement kind of feel.
This idea of Cacky going off to college certainly was one of these things I was personally pushing off mentally. But I was really looking forward to and enjoying every minute of it. It was a great summer up to that point. It was a dream summer.
I started getting random bruises on my body, which was abnormal. I ended up developing like this weird flu-like sickness, and my nose started to bleed and my gums started to bleed.
3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, Cacky had some really, really serious symptoms. There was enough desperation between what was going on with Cacky and what I was hearing from Catherine and Dan, my brother-in-law Dan, that we probably should go get this checked out.
As things escalated and heightened, it was like, wait a second, something's wrong.
It was my dad and I who went to the ER together. They drew my blood, and then within about an hour, the physician's assistant came in, and he was like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong. And he said, it looks like you could have leukemia. Well, that sounds pretty serious. So we call my mom, and she starts freaking out on the phone. I get admitted, and through tests, bone marrow biopsies, and a few weeks, we found out that I was diagnosed with this autoimmune disease called severe idiopathic aplastic anemia.
I had a 2-hour plus drive to get to Cacky. So she was coming from the beach and I'm coming from here, and I had all this time to sort of think, and it was sort of disbelief, and you can't even process at that moment because you just have to do. So I know this was bad, but I can't do anything about it, and I have to just go and sort of show up and see, because we didn't really have any answers then.
She got her first ambulance ride, and so they put her in this ambulance, and I pulled up behind in the truck, and they closed the door, and she pulled off. And I don't know if it was a dark moment, but it was certainly a surreal moment.
My faith felt very strong, and then I get my first dose of chemo-like medicine, and it felt like the Lord just left. Where are you, God? I'm in this, and you're not, it doesn't feel like you're here with me. And that was so hard. And I had tons of questions, like, why am I even praying if this is happening? Or why does the little girl next to me, why aren't you healing her? That was so many questions. It was very difficult, but I just had to keep remembering that God is who He says He is, and He's a good and faithful God, even though it did not feel like it.
I would pull the nurses out in the hallway. I'm like, excuse me, Cacky, I'm gonna go in the hallway. And I'd be like, what am I supposed to do? To the nurses. And I pulled one aside and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I was like, her numbers are this, and we're gonna send her home. And how am I gonna know on Tuesday that it's gonna be okay? And I'm like desperate, somebody give me hope. And then she's like, I can't tell you that.
It honestly felt like God didn't meet me in my dark moments, and that was the hardest thing. I got my first transplant, and then I had a complication, and my graft failed, and so I had to get a second transplant. And I got the second transplant, and it was around Thanksgiving time, and all of a sudden I had this fear that I've never had before, that I'm just gonna die. And I was like, never had that fear before, because I know that I'm gonna go to heaven. Why would I be scared of this? But I just thought I was gonna die. And I'll always remember on Thanksgiving, everybody was taking pictures, and I was like, are they taking pictures so that we can remember this? Because this is gonna be my last Thanksgiving with my family. And I was just in disbelief. And so that was my hardest moment, because I couldn't imagine dying. I was like, that, when you're that close to death, it can be really scary.
At that time, the way I experienced Jesus and was through the physical presence of people, and family would come to visit, and it was just that presence. Also meeting like needs, someone dropping off that cup of coffee, or a snack, or a text, or knowing that my family was getting fed, felt like, okay, I see the Lord's hand on things, and I felt like I could get a deep breath. It was a lot of conversations between me and God, and saying, do you trust me, or do you trust man's word, over what I have said and who I am and what I'm gonna do.
I feel like I'm out of it, but still in it, where I'm still asking like God tons of questions, and I'll probably be doing that for a very long time, and still trying to figure out like, why did that happen? God, I'm never praying a dangerous prayer again. I'm never ever going to be like, I'll go wherever you want me to go, or I'll do whatever you want me to do, because it felt like he led me into the hospital. And I was like, well, if this is the type of God you are, then I'm never praying that prayer again. Mm-hmm. But then I listened to this podcast, and the guy was saying, we only have this time on earth to suffer. And we get to heaven and we don't suffer anymore. Mm. And so then my perspective changed, like, thank you, Jesus, and allow me to suffer, really, is what it was. Because I'm not going to be able to suffer in heaven, and so it felt like I was suffering in the hospital, and it was just like, thank you, Jesus, that I was able to go through that, and that I can bring glory to your name, and that hopefully the doctors see you through me. You have to trust in his character. Really, that's all you can do, and just trust his love for you. And he loves us through it all, even when we're asking these hard questions, or when it feels like he's not there. He's always there, and just to trust in his heart and to keep having faith.